Welcome to Sparks of History, where Jewish history and world history meet. We are very honored and pleased to have with us today Rabbi Alexander Hool in our ongoing Mosaic of Press series. Rabbi Hool spent his formative years in the esteemed Gateshead Yeshivah in England under the guidance of Rav Avrohom Gurwitz. Rabbi Hool subsequently dedicated over 2 decades in advanced Torah study in the Ponevezh Yeshivah and Kollel. Renowned for his scholarly pursuits and works, Rabbi Hool has produced groundbreaking studies in the realms of historical chronology, mathematical concepts, and other captivating areas of study. Rabbi Hool's books include The Desert Encampments, From Sinai to the Holy Land, Pharaoh, Biblical History, Egypt, and the Missing Millennium, Searching for Sinai, The Location and Revelation, The Challenge of Jewish History, the Bible, the Greeks, and the Missing 168 Years. And today we will be discussing Rabbi Hool's absolutely fascinating work, The 6 Days of Creation, the Garden of Eden, Dinosaurs, and the Missing Billions, another gem in the Mosaic Press lineup of elegant, meaningful, and bold works. Thank you, Rabbi Hool, for being with us. We appreciate it very much.
I'm delighted to join you, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Just to get started, in very general terms, what are some of the approaches when one is faced and needs to reconcile seeming contradictions between science and Torah/religion?
Right. Well, there are basically 3 kinds of approaches to try and reconcile the problems. One approach is to try and undermine the scientific evidence and to try and show that it does not reflect what it claims to reflect, and therefore resolve the contradiction. That's one approach. Another approach is to accept the scientific evidence and the scientific conclusions and consensus based on the evidence, and to confront the apparent discrepancy with the Torah, and therefore try and explain or interpret the verses of the Bible metaphorically, or not in the literal way we have been taught. That's another approach. And the third approach is to claim that there is no contradiction because science is ultimately based on extrapolation into the distant past, and it's based on the idea that things haven't changed since the beginning of creation, and that can be challenged by saying that the laws of nature may have been different in earlier times, and therefore we could not base from evidence which we have now to get a true age of the universe or of the world. So these are basically the 3 approaches which attempt to try and reconcile.
How is the third approach that different from the first? If the third approach is basically saying the science is wrong, is that what the third approach is saying? Or science is, we don't have the full picture?
Right. Well, the third approach is saying that the science is right. That if things were going, if the situation was as it is today throughout history, then the information which we can gather from the scientific evidence will actually project us to the true age of the universe. But it's based on an assumption that things have been the same. And the claim is that in the earlier days, the laws of nature might have been different. So it's not actually challenging the laws of the laws and the conclusions of the scientific evidence, as it were. The first approach is to say that no, that the scientists have got it wrong. They're claiming something, which is they're claiming this shows us the age of the universe. It doesn't show us. It can be interpreted in a different way and nothing to do with the age of the universe. So that's really the first approach.
What are the main methods or proofs for calculating the age of the universe and the age of the earth? In simple terms, I know that there's a big science around that, but how do scientists even begin to do that?
Right. Well, it's quite amazing. I mean, scientists have made leaps and bounds in discovering there's tremendous wisdom in the creation, and they've discovered, as it were, fingerprints from light which are coming from distant stars. And by just studying the light coming in, they've managed to work out how long the light has been traveling for. Based on the frequency of the light, something which is called redshift, they can actually extrapolate back and work out how long the light has been traveling. And a detailed study of this revealed that the light is coming in from distant stars which have been traveling billions of years old. I think that the oldest star is something like 11.2 billion years it's been traveling for. Besides for that, they've also discovered, in fact, they went looking for it before they discovered it. Based on their calculations, they believed that there would be a distant light from the early universe, from the early days of the universe, which is roughly 13.8 billion years old. And it should be arriving to us in the microwave region, and we would be able to sort of receive it and get some kind of picture of what things were like in that distant past. And indeed, they actually found it several decades after they actually suggested that it could be found. It's called the microwave background, and it's taken pictures of it, as it were, as the light is now coming in from 13.8 billion years, and it gives us a picture of what the universe looked like at that time, as the scientists claim. So we have this microwave background, which demonstrates the age of the universe and the distant stars as well, all based on the fingerprints, as it were, from the light, which can tell us how long the light has been traveling for. Furthermore, with respect to the age of the Earth, scientists use mineral stones which have radioactive decay, and basically there's certain isotopes within the stone that they change from one isotope to another, a father isotope to a daughter isotope, and there's a fixed rate how this change takes place. And based on the fixed rate, which we know, they can see the accumulation of these daughter isotopes in the stone, in the minerals, and can work out how long the stone has been decaying for. And that gives results of, once again, billions of years old for these stones in the earth.
So we're talking about different proofs, different methods that seem to corroborate each other. It's not just one proof and then that's it. These are multiple proofs.
Yeah. These are multiple proofs, and they all harmonize together. Even the radioactive, they don't just take one mineral, they take various minerals and various radioactive decay of the isotopes. And even in one stone, they have two sets of isotopes being accumulated, and the numbers match for the same year. So, so it is very, very strong evidence that they have been decaying for so much time.
Yeah. So your premise, again, if I understand it correctly, Rabbi Hool, is that let's take the age of the universe, 13 billion years, age of the earth, billions, as a scientific given. Let's not say that that's hogwash. That's science. It's billions of years old. Now we want to understand, how do we reconcile that with the Torah's 5,874 plus years? And as I read the book, I was trying to understand your explanation of how we understand time. It's a function of what is time? Can you just elaborate again in general terms how that works out?
Right, yeah. I'd just like to first qualify that yes, the scientific evidence is quite it's strong and robust. 100%, no, there's nothing 100% in this world. So what we suggest is an explanation, interpretation to reconcile. If we are wrong, it doesn't mean that the Torah is wrong. It means that either there's another explanation or science is ultimately wrong. But following the evidence of the scientific consensus, I explored a possibility for reconciliation with the literal understanding in the verses of the Torah, what we learned in Cheder. And I discovered as follows. Einstein, in the beginning of the last century, discovered a mechanism which can slow down the cycle of the sun. We know that the cycle of the sun, the daily cycle of the sun, takes 24 hours to make its cycle. The sun goes up in the morning in the east and sets in the west, and then goes under the earth and comes back down again into the east. That all takes 24 hours. Now we've heard it, we know about miracles, miraculous events where in the times of Yeshua, the sun stopped still, and therefore the day took a long time. Einstein discovered not a mechanism which doesn't make the sun stand still, but it could make the sun slow down. Instead of taking 24 hours, it can take 48 hours. In fact, there's no end to how long you can contract the cycle of the sun. There is this mechanism which he discovered. It's called time dilation. Now, he discovered it with the field of gravitation, based on his theory of gravitation in general relativity. The kind of time dilation which is affected is a very, very small. It's not the kind of time dilation which we need to try and reconcile the age of the universe. However, he discovered this concept, this mechanism of time dilation. Now, this actually was revealed several years earlier by a Kabbalist, the Leshem, known as the Leshem, based on Tikkunei Zohar, making the same concept of time dilation. He says that he deduces from the Tikkunei Zohar that the days before the flood were actually longer than our days. They weren't 24 hours. They were, in fact, 13 times longer than our days, 13 times 24 hours. In the same way, people lived longer. Instead of living, we know from the Psukim in the Torah that people, instead of living until 70 years, they lived to roughly almost 1,000 years. And he said it was the same proportion, was not that was the years, it was the length of the days. The days were actually longer. And he says this was a function of the time. It wasn't something which happened actually in the sun. It was having something to time, and therefore affected all the planets, because all the planets are time-bound events. And because the time was slowed down, this caused the cycles of the sun and the planets to slow down. In the case of the Tikkunei Zohar, he's talking about 13 times slower. Okay, so again, we've got this same concept, which was discovered by Einstein, of time dilation, and whereas this very small time dilation by gravity, but we have another example of time dilation in the Tikkunei Zohar in the days before the flood. Again, also not drastic time dilation, 13 times as long as normal day, but that we have this concept. So basically, in order to try and reconcile the age of the universe with the literal understanding of the Torah, what we need is a time dilation where the one day in the 6 days of creation could dilate and slow down the process of the sun traveling around its daily cycle from one day to billions of years. Now, could that be possible? Could we have some kind of mechanism that could affect such a kind of time dilation? Well, what we suggest is that yes, there is some kind of mechanism which could activate this time dilation, and this is space expansion. And there is scientists have discovered soon after Einstein came out with his theory of general relativity that the space, the universe is actually expanding. That doesn't mean the planet is expanding. It means the space between the planets are expanding. What we will consider as empty space, something which is a vacuum, no, it's something which exists because it's an entity which can actually expand. Now, they discovered this because they noticed that all the stars in all different directions appeared to be receding from us. And then they came to the realization it's not because the stars are moving, because they're all moving in different directions, but they're all moving at the same sort of rate. They came to the realization it's the space between us and the stars which is dilating, which is expanding, and therefore causing the stars to move away from us. Now, they've also discovered that in the early universe, there was an exponential expansion of space. A kind of exponential expansion that if the kind of time, we know time and space are interrelated. In fact, way back the Maharal actually tells us that time and space are really one of the same. In just the last century, this was the scientists that came to this realization, and they call it actually space-time, that time is like a fourth dimension to space. It's really one entity. It's just difficult to be able to conceptualize because we can't visualize it. But in a mathematical model, it can be seen that time and space are interconnected. And therefore, what we suggest is that when this exponential expansion of space took place in the early universe, it was induced or resulted in an exponential expansion of time, where that means it's actually the fifth day of creation. The cycle of the sun it slowed down incredibly from 24 hours to 13.8 billion years, basically. Now, this is also based on the assumption that the universe is not expanding anymore. Now, this is not the scientific consensus. The scientists believe that the universe at present is continued to expand, and we can see time is not expanding. So that would indicate that time is not related. The expansion of time is not related to the expansion of space. However, there is no actual evidence. There is no scientific evidence that the universe is presently expanding. The whole weight of evidence that the universe expanded is from the light coming from distant stars. Is what the scientists are looking at is what happened in the distant past, billions of years ago. They have no information about the state of the universe as it is now. And we're actually told in the Gemara, in the Talmud in Chagiga, that the universe did expand, like scientists have actually proven, in the early universe, but it stopped expanding in the early days of creation. As everyone knows, this is the name HaKadosh Baruch Hu was given, Kel Shakai, because Sha'omar La'olam Odai, he stopped the expansion of the universe. So what we're suggesting is that this expansion took place on the fifth day of creation. It was an exponential expansion, followed by a gradual expansion over millions of years and billions of years, in fact. And the accumulated effect was that the fifth day, the sun slowed down, the cycle of the sun slowed down from 24 hours to 13.8 billion years.
So when we look at the fifth day, we can call it 13 billion, and we can call it one day. Again,
exactly.
How do we call it? When we say it's one day, what does that mean? What does a day mean now on the fifth day?
Right. What a day means, like we learned in Cheder, where the sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening. That's a day. So that was a day like any other day. It rose in the morning. It just took an awful long time. So we've got the 6 days. So really, if we're counting days and years by cycles of the sun, so we're really 5,784 years. But in times of general time, whatever has elapsed, if you had a watch, we've been going through an awful long time, and it was also all contained really in that long fifth day of creation.
So if Jewish law says, for example, that one can recite the morning prayers, shacharit, until the 4th hour of the day, so we would all have millions, hundreds of millions, billions of years to wake up in the morning and do our tefillah, do our prayers.
Yeah, if we were living in the 5th day, that's right, absolutely right.
Okay, fascinating. When you take your children to a museum and you see these giant fossil skeletons of dinosaurs. I don't even know all the names anymore. As a kid, we knew all the names of the dinosaurs. What do you tell when children says, "Wow, where are these things? Is it real? Is it do they really exist?" What do you tell them?
Well, I've changed my opinion since I went into the subject. I originally thought it was based on some kind of assumptions and all kind of theories, which can be, sort of interpretation and conjecture. Nothing really solid. As we said, there's no mention in the Torah of such great beings, and when did they exist? They wouldn't be able to exist with man. How could it possibly be? But that's all changed now. When I follow the evidence and I discovered reconciliation. Firstly, the evidence is really it's fantastic. I mean, they're finding a new species of dinosaur literally every single week. They've discovered over 10,000 fossils. They haven't found a fingernail and sort of extrapolated what the animal might have looked at. They found gigantic bones. They found full skeletons of these gigantic creatures. And to date, there's over, I think, 11,000 different fossils from all over the world for all different continents.
This would be an actual skeleton of a dinosaur that is what 100 million years old in how we're understanding time now.
Right. The way that they date them for the same with these by looking at the sediments which they've been buried in these dinosaurs, and they see that the era of the dinosaurs began about 250 million years ago till about 65 million years ago. So since 65 million years ago, there've been no dinosaurs. So there's been a long period of time, and the FIA calculations, this would have taken place late in the day, very late in the day, on the 5th day, quite close to sunset, is when the era of the dinosaurs took place. And in fact, we do have indication from the Torah of such a species. We know that the birds were created on the 5th day. This is what the Pasuk tells us, that although the land animals were created on the 6th day, but the birds were created on the 5th day. And scientists have come to the realization that the anatomy of the dinosaur is very, very similar in many ways to the birds. And they believe that birds have evolved from dinosaurs, in fact. And so one would expect that if the birds were created on the 5th day and dinosaurs are the similar anatomy, we would expect that the dinosaurs might have also been created on the 5th day. And in fact, there is word alluding to that, the Taninim Hagdolim, which is also mentioned in the Torah, which were created on the 5th day. Rashi says that it refers to, the literal translation is the big fish, And he says, esoteric translation, the Midrashic translation is that it's referring to the Leviathan, the great Leviathan. Now we're offered a literal explanation that taninin doesn't usually mean fish, it means more of a reptile. And here it can refer to these gigantic dinosaur reptiles, which were evidently formed created on the fifth day of creation. As we know in Chulin, that everything which is inland has a prototype in the water. So the Leviathan and these great whales, there are these great whales which are 40 meters long, had their equivalent in land, and these were the dinosaurs, which were created on the fifth day, but didn't survive the fifth day because they became extinct just before sunset, 66 million years ago.
Okay. Why do you think, Rabbi Hool, that it was the fifth day? In other words, someone would look at this understanding and say, well, I can see it happening on the first day. The sun's not in place, the moon's not in place, there's some kind of primordial light. Second day, perhaps, nothing's really been formed. How do we get to the fifth day for this?
Right. Well, we know from the evidence, from the scientific evidence, that the stars have been traveling, the light from the stars have been traveling billions of years. So when we need to incorporate billions of years, we have to look from the fourth day onwards, because the stars were only created on the fourth day. So the truth of the matter is there might have been time dilation the first 3 days, but it's not relevant to us because we're discussing the evidence, the scientific evidence of the stars, right? And the stars were only created on the fourth day. So and it's 13.8 billion years from the oldest light and the oldest stars, quite similar number to that. So between the fourth and the sixth, we're actually told in the Zohar that the last 3 days actually were a completion of the first 3 days. That the fourth day was a completion of the first day, and the fifth day was a completion of the second day, and the sixth day was a completion of the third day. So therefore we find that the first day the light was created, and the fourth day, which corresponded to the first, was the constellations, which was the sun and the moon actually, and the Mazola, which is actually referred to the Medrash. Then the fifth day corresponds to the second day, and the second day the waters was formed, the seas were formed, and the fifth day was the animals in the waters, from the waters were formed. That was the completion of the creation of the second day. And the sixth day was corresponds to the third day. The third day was the Abasha, the dried land, and the sixth day was the completion of that, the completion of the creation of the dry land, where the animals came forth from the dry land. So if we were trying to understand when the expansion of time and space would take place, we would naturally choose the fifth day of creation, because on the second day, it corresponds to the fifth day, it was the heavens was created, and space and the Rokia is really the heavens. What we can call the heavens and the earth is the whole of the universe, the space of the universe. Is a completion of the space of the universe would have taken place on the fifth day. In Cabalistic terms as well, the fifth day actually corresponds to Netzach and Hod, which is really time and space. Moshe Rabbeinu is the representative of Netzach, and the name Moshe Rabbeinu is Hashem, which is Yud Kei Vov Kei, which is Hoya Hove V'Yeh, which is the idea of the infinite time. That is Netzach, and Hod is Aaron. Aaron HaKohen is the symbol of Hod, and that Aaron, if the letters spell Ha'oran, the box, as it were, which is space. And Netzach and Hod together, those are the two go together, and they were corrected on, complemented on the fifth day of creation, and therefore time and space was their area where we see this the infinity of the Almighty in space and in time. Interesting enough, that one of the two names of the Mighty one is Makom, which is space, and Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is time, because this is where we see the infinity, the Ein Sof of the Almighty, which is really encapsulate the whole of creation. Time and space is something which is really a Makayim of the whole of creation, which is what is really the bonus level.
What is the continental drift, and why is it important? What does it teach us, tell us from a Torah perspective as well?
Well, it's in the last century. Scientists have took the knowledge of the shape of the world, and it looks a little bit like a jigsaw. There are two Americas, and suggest that at one stage the land, the whole of the world was in one big landmass. And then they've discovered more evidence suggesting that. They compared sediments on the east of America with the west of Europe, and they find they match. They find other evidences, glaciation in the north and south poles and the different areas which were now separated. But if we sort of put them together, the glaciation can be now understood as a sequence of events in the same area, and that different animals are appearing on the same area of the globe, but separated by thousands of miles of water. But if they were once together, that would explain it. And they've also come up with a scientific explanation that basically the continents sort of float on giant plates which can move on molten mantle deep inside the earth. And when there's sort of things coming up from the earth at these ridges, at these ocean ridges, that can actually push away these plates and develop a new ocean floor and basically carry the continents with them. And they've actually given times when the universe, the earth was one, and at what time it actually separated out. Now, this is fascinating because we can actually seem to find allusion to this in the 6 days of creation. At the beginning, we're told that the Almighty called the Yabasha Eretz. He called the dry land Eretz. Now, the singular context is used here. Looking at the world as we have today, we have America, South America, Australia. But I wouldn't expect it that the whole of the land to be called Yabasha in the singular form, and the naming of the land Ha'oretz as one land. We wouldn't expect it to be called as the lands, or the Yabashot. Not one, but if at the time of creation the land was actually one gigantic landmass, it all becomes clear. Again, this would also explain the contradiction that in the beginning the Torah says L'mikveh hamayim koro yamim. The one hand, the Torah says that the basin of water is called seas. So on the one hand, we're calling the seas a basin of water in the singular form, and we're referring to it as seas in the plural form. And we're told in Chazal that the reason is because the fish in the various seas are different, taste different. So therefore, although it's one big sea, they're all connected, but the fish are different. So therefore, they're considered as different seas. Again, with this understanding, we can have a literal explanation now that when the fishes were created on the 5th day of creation, and actually when the land mass was actually separated out, and this actually fits in with the scientific evidence that the land mass broke apart millions of years ago, which would have been on the fifth day of creation, at the time of the creation of the fish. So yes, when the different fish were created, there actually was the different seas were created. So originally it was one big basin of water, and then eventually it became split through the land, this continental drift. Basically, it created different oceans just at the time when the fish were created. Now, this further helps us to understand the psukim in Noach, Parshas Noach, about the flood. A basic question is that we know that all the animals came to the ark from all over the world. So the question we must ask is, how did the koala bear, for example, get from Australia? It only exists in Australia. How did the koala get to Noah's Ark? The Noah's Ark wasn't in Australia. If it was, we'd have the same problem how the other animals got to Australia. But if what happened was at the time of the Mabul, the land was reunited together and allowing the animals to come together. And there is indication, in fact, from the Pesukim, that when the rain fell down, it fell down on one stretch of land, although it covered the whole world, because they were all put together. And obviously then there was a time when the world split up again after the flood. And again, we seem to have allusion to it in the Dor HaFlaga, the time of the Migdal Bovel, where the words of the Torah is V'nifliga ha'oretz. The land actually literally means the land actually broke apart. So this would indicate that not only the nations were separated, they're actually the land upon them were actually separated as well. And this would actually explain two areas of Cush. We know Cush was at the time, he was one of the sons of Chom and lived at the time of Migdal Bovel. And we find two areas which are called Cush, one in India and one in Africa, which are separated by thousands of kilometers of water. And it's very difficult to understand how the two areas are both called Cush, and they both have the same sort of same kind of natural civilization, even musical instruments, which we find in both areas. Now this could be explained because the scientists actually say that Kush and India were actually once joined together. And so evidently what happened was at the time of Migdal Bovel, not only were the nations separated, actually two families of Kush were actually split apart. One set in India and one was left in Africa.
Okay. So this is not this reuniting of the land masses and then this second separation. That's not part of science, but that would use the scientific proof of the continental drift and apply it to a different period of time.
Right. Yeah, because this is expectedly not known to the scientific world because it's very hard to prove. It's very hard to prove that it was once put together, but once it was separated, when it came back together, and we're talking about miraculously, so it's not a scientific explanation here. But there is no evidence against it, but there is actually evidence in support of that, besides for the Kush, in fact, which I've discussed, with referring to the Egyptian calendar. We can actually find scientific proof that there was a tremendous change in the monsoon cycle around about the time of Dor HaFlaga, which could be explained by this massive continental drift, which would have taken place at that time, according to our understanding of the Torah now.
Okay. The Garden of Eden, Gan Eden, of course, that is a topic that has, I don't know if the right word is mystified. It's certainly throughout history. Where is the Garden of Eden? What is the Garden of Eden? We obviously have the accounting of Alexander the Great, who attempted to enter the Garden of Eden. How do you deal with the location of the Garden of Eden? And why is this part of the book? Why is the Garden of Eden, Age of the Universe, Dinosaurs, continental drift, big topics. Garden of Eden seems to be a little different. How does it all fit in?
Well, I put it in really because it's all part of the 6 days of creation, and we know about Gan Eden. I mean, everyone, we really, firstly, we have to really establish that there really is there are two Gan Edens. There's Gan Eden, which we talk about that after a person dies, he goes into Gan Eden. That's Gan Eden Shamara. That's the in a spiritual world. But we also have a literal Gan Eden down below, and we know this from the fact that the Psukim talk about the rivers emanating from Gan Eden, which exist to us today. When we have the Tigris and the Euphrates, these are all mentioned in the first Psukim of the Torah, which emanated from Gan Eden. And we have the Nile, which is actually the Gihon, although people think it's the Pishon, it's actually not, it's the Gihon, which surrounds Cush. And it's the Nile, which we know today surrounds the country of Cush. So we're talking about land, we're talking about rivers which are in this world, in our globe, in our physical globe, and the rivers are passing by the land of Cush and the land of Havilah, Pishon, and Ashur as well, and they all emanated from Gan Eden. So it's where is this Gan Eden? It must be somewhere in this world. In fact, we're told Alexander the Great, he didn't go to heaven. We're told he was an explorer and he went to Africa. And we're told that in Africa, he found the Gan Eden. He wasn't allowed in, but he got up to the borders of it. So we know already that it's in Africa somewhere. So I looked into the matter where we're following the clues given to us by the Torah where Gan Eden is. And there is some cryptic wording in the Torah which tells us, referring to places to the east. And the most emphasized place, I would say, is where Avrohom, at the end, I think, Parshas Chayesora, where Avrohom sends the concubines and their families away from Eretz Yisrael to the land of the east. Kedma, the words of the Pasuk is, eastwards to the land of the east. Now, this seems tautologist because if he sent them to the east, then they're obviously going to the land of the east. Why does the verse need to tell me that they go to the land of the east? And this would indicate that he sent them east of Eretz Yisrael and they went to the land of the east of somewhere else. And what other place could be significant enough for the Torah to mention it, other than Gan Eden? We know Eretz Yisrael is the special land, but what other place is there which the Torah would refer to as east of that place? And the natural answer to that is Gan Eden. So we're told that he sent these concubines to the land of the east, which is east of Gan Eden. Now, we could establish where these concubines were. We're cutting a long story short. It actually indicates they were there in Taiman, right? They extended all the way down to Saudi Arabia, to the bottom of Saudi Arabia, to Taiman. And so that would indicate that Gan Eden would be to the west of Taiman. We also have another indication that from there, from the Hari Kedem, which is by Taiman, they went to Shinar, which was between the Tigris and the Euphrates, and there they were not in the east anymore. They'd already gone to the west of Gan Eden. So that means Gan Eden must lie between somewhere between the Euphrates and the Taiman. And that leaves basically a small place in Africa, a very small place in Africa, just next to the tip of the bottom of the Red Sea. That's basically in order to putting in everything, factoring out all the information that leads us to this particular place, this particular spot. And it's quite amazing, actually, that the area is called the Gulf of Aden, which in fact there's a place called in Taimon called Aden, and evidently this was named after because it was actually opposite where Gan Eden is, and it also is a fascinating location. It's really if it's the center of the north, between the north and east, north and east stretch of land. If it's actually bang in the middle, and we know from the Zohar that Gan Eden was considered in the middle. Again, it's also, we know from the Arizal that it was in the equivalent of the navel of the globe. And again, if you look at the terms of the globe from the north to the south pole, the 4/7 I think of a person's body is the navel, and that 4/7 of the globe you'll come to this area. But what I found, actually, I was astounded to discover when I looked at the Google pictures of it's actually a volcanic area, this area, so people can't naturally go there for understandable reasons. But there's the one particular volcano where there seems to be a green patch inside it, as if there's trees growing there, and the picture from the Google Maps. Unfortunately, it's just recently after the book became published, they slightly changed the mapping system of Google, and you can't get the same picture now. But we printed it in the book, so this picture inside the volcano, it seems to represent basically the whole Sipur, the story of what happened in those early days of creation. We have a sort of a profile of Chava, the face of Chava. We have the serpent. We have sort of a profile of Hevel. We have a profile of Cain, and we even have the sword. The sword, which we're told in the possibly exactly the shape of the Red Sea, is in the shape of sort of an ancient sword, Roman sword, with the two charum at the top, the two forks of the Red Sea at the top, in the shape of sort of this double-sided sword, and the tip of the sword is just by Gan Eden. So yes, there's some riveting pictures which seem to allude to what happened in Gan Eden, just at this place where we seem to be alluded to from the cryptic wording in the Torah.
Fascinating. Rabbi Hool, what's next? What's next on the lineup of your projects? Is it? I take it it's not going to be a movie, right? The Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like that. But seriously, what is next that you're working on now?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm talking about the Lost Ark, actually. I have done, yeah, but I'm not sure when to publicize that. But what we've actually working on presently in publication is volume 2 of 6 Days of Creation, where we've looked at the claim of that scientists have amassed over the last century, that the land animals seem to be stretched back millions of years old. Not billions, no, but millions of years old. According to our conclusions in the volume 1, the whole expansion took place on the 5th day of creation, and that's where the millions and billions of years were. But from the 6th day onwards, it was relative normal time. The Zohar says it was a bit longer the days before the Mabul, but it was only 13 times long. There's nothing that wouldn't get to millions of years. So I've approached the evidence referring to evolution and how the development of life over millions of years, how that can be explained through the Torah. What is the truth about the development of life, and obviously that the Torah tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created all the animals. But how he created them, there was we have tremendous wisdom now of the way things develop in the world, all kinds of a seed. Put a seed in the ground and it can turn into a great oak tree. We're going to have a silkworm turning into a butterfly. Transition stages is not a contradiction to the Torah. In fact, it's supported by the Torah and Chazal. We have a Yerushalmi which says that every 7 years, in fact, Kodesh Baruch Hu changes his world. He changes one creation to another. How could this maybe processes which is inbuilt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu inbuilt into the creation, but how could this take place over millions of years if on the sixth day of creation it was only a few thousand years ago? So that's what we hope to be published very soon.
Excellent. Okay. Again, this has been absolutely fascinating, and we urge all our listeners and viewers to go online and purchase the 6 Days of Creation, Part 1, as we know now, the Garden of Eden, Dinosaurs, and the Missing Billions. And Rabbi Hool, thank you so much for today. You should continue to go from strength to strength, from chayil to chayil in all of your wonderful endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great pleasure.